we try everything we can think of to get ourselves out, all the tactics. We realize we're not going to get ourselves out.
Today's guest is wild woman Sarah Marino. She's a nature photographer, photography educator, and writer based in southwestern Colorado. In addition to photographing grand landscapes, Sarah is best known for her photographs of smaller subjects, including intimate landscapes, abstract renditions of natural subjects, and creative portraits of plants and trees. Sarah, a co-founder of the Nature First Alliance for Responsible Nature Photography, also seeks to promote the responsible stewardship of natural and wild places through her photography and teaching. You can find more about Sarah and her work at smallscenes.com. Now get ready for my conversation with wild woman Sarah Marino. Let's go. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Bree.
Oh my gosh, my Siri is going because it thought I said Siri. Wait, now it's going to go again. Wait, maybe not. Oh, technology. This is so fun. Thanks for agreeing to come on and chat with me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about whatever we end up talking about.
Whatever we end up talking about. Well, you already gave me some goodies, so I'm super excited. I have to tell you, okay, I hope this isn't like super embarrassing, but since when I started photography, when I like got my camera in December of 2019, it hasn't been that long actually. And when I saw your work and Jennifer's work, because you guys were doing some stuff, you had that little YouTube channel. Remember your little YouTube channel?
Oh, a one episode YouTube channel.
Is it one or I thought there was a couple?
I'm pretty sure it's only one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll embarrass you. Love Light Landscape. Is that what it is? No, Laugh Landscape.
I don't remember even. It's been because that was probably 2020 pandemic times.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a while.
Right? I know. But when I saw your work, because I thought landscape photography was big scenes and all of the things and wide angle. And I was like, does it have to be? And then I saw especially your work, Jennifer's work, some of the things that you guys were doing. And I'm like, look at what these women are doing. And it like gave me an example of like the permission I could give myself to go and like I'm like, because I've always loved rocks and I'm like, oh, now I can go make photos of rocks and it could be a thing. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that because I spend a lot of time photographing things like rocks, and it's a totally valid pursuit. And the fact that that resonated with you is fantastic. I love that.
Well, it's fun. And I feel because I wasn't forcing myself to make work that I thought I should and I'll have to backtrack and say that's been a process of making the shift. Every time I go out, I allow myself to just like more and more photograph like exactly what speaks to me, without forcing it. And I really I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I really appreciate that I can do that. And it's it's helped my work so much. Like I think I've grown a lot. Well, I've practiced a lot, but I think I've grown a lot in the past few years because I've allowed myself to do that. And I don't know about you, but I think this is my personal opinion. When we find like the style that we like, and we don't have to stay in that style, but like or subjects that we love, that just allows us to like our work to really come alive. And I've seen that with like a lot of people. It's so good.
I think that's such an important observation for me too, where it's like the two things come together to keep me excited about photography. One is that I'm photographing the things I love. So I want to go find more of them. I want to see the plants I really enjoy in different environments. I want to explore and learn more about the natural world. And then it's really hard. So the fact that it's that connection and the challenge I think those two things together are one of the reasons that this is one of the only things I've done for more than a couple of years. Like it's kept me engaged for years and years and years. And for me, I think it's that combination of things.
Yeah, because as we grow, we allow it to get more challenging.
Yeah.
So this is not a story I'd plan on sharing, but I just went to Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona. And it was just a one night backpacking thing. I could have brought my tripod, but I was like, it's going to be hot. I'm just going to take my camera and do anything handheld. It's kind of a little scouting mission to see if I even like it. And I found some of the best stuff there, like small, like intimate things, and some have rocks. And I was so mad that I didn't have my tripod. And so like I was like trying to hold my breath and do some focus stacking
Yeah.
handheld. And so this is problematic work, but it's super challenging. And it just made me like hungry to go back.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Yeah, a PFO, Petrified Forest, is such a fantastic place for little intimate landscapes. Like, if the rocks there, if you like rocks, it's
love.
definitely yeah.
And I'm kind of leaning into some like when I see something and I go, that's really interesting and it's kind of weird, I just let myself explore it. I'm like, who cares if it's weird? And maybe sometimes I get home and I'm like, yeah, that was really weird. That's never seeing the light of day. And then sometimes I'm like, that's like interesting weird. And I might work on that, you know?
Oh, I love the weird subjects. Like, we were just out for photography, and when I say we, I mean me and my husband, Ron, who's also a nature photographer. We were out looking for fall colors yesterday around our house in southwestern Colorado, and as we're driving by, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's this crazy green scum on the side of the road," and it's like these threads of algae that were in this pond on the side of the road, and they were moving with the current of the water, and it was just so incredibly beautiful. It was like neon green, the light was sparkling on the surface, and these people pulled over, I think thinking we were photographing fall colors, and they're like looking at us like, what is going on here? This is just ridiculous. It's like, no, this is so cool and so beautiful. And like, if you can see beauty in that kind of thing, or curiosity, or wonder, or excitement, I think that makes the world so much more fun, and photography so much more fun too. Like, if you're always embracing wonder and joy at scum on the side of the road and its photographic potential, I think that just makes life more fun. Personally, that's my approach, at least.
I agree. And I think photography for me, or at least nature photography, has you know what? No, that's not true. It's like any photography because I'm noticing light in different ways than I have before. I'm noticing smaller things, like I'm noticing small shifts and things. And it is amazing that I can see more detail in my life when I'm paying attention
Mhm.
than I have before, you know. So, and now my husband sees it too because he sees the things
Okay.
that I photograph. He's like, "Did you see that over there?" Like we passed, so we went on this drive we went on this drive to this state park that I've never been to, and it has a lake in it, and there's like rocks and interesting trees. And I'm like, we are coming back here. And on the way out, there's this section of it's like kind of still water, but there's all of these like dead trees coming out of it. He's like, "Did you see that over there?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't, but yes, thank you. We'll have to come back there." Right. So even now he's pointing out some of the subjects that he thinks I like. So
And I think that makes experiences in nature more fun too. Like, if you go out for photography and it's things aren't working with the sky and the ground landscape, and you see dead trees sticking out of water or scum in a little pond on the side of the road, it's like your day was still fun. It still felt exciting. Like, I just feel like that's a more fun way to live, instead of being like, I'm not even taking my camera out of the bag. Like, it's just a more joyous way of approaching life.
I agree. Photography is so fun. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
So you said, I ask everyone, just for the audience, I ask everyone a little bit of information ahead of time. So we have a little bit of a direction to go here. I thought this was super interesting that you said sometimes frustration is a big part of what keeps you engaged photographically. What is that about? You like being frustrated?
No,
Or like, tell me more.
I think it goes back to that challenging aspect. That the one of the reasons I keep doing this is because I feel like I'm never quite there. Like in my previous career, I felt like by the time I was in my early 30s, I was really good at what I was doing. And yeah, I could have worked on bigger projects or more complex projects, or I could have kept on doing that, but it was kind of like, okay, I figured this out and I enjoy it. I'm good at it, but it doesn't feel super challenging anymore. So with photography, I started in 2008. That's when I got my camera. And I still feel like every time I go out, it's like I still have so much to learn. I have things to try. I want to be better. This experience I did find frustrating. And next time I go back, I want to be better. I want to do this more fully. I want to explore a subject more deeply. And it's that cycle of learning and then feeling like, well, maybe I could do better and I want to try again. It's that cycle that I think keeps me coming back. And I haven't really experienced that as much in other parts of my life. So I do think it's that feeling of like, oh, I wasn't my best, and if I come back and try again, maybe I can, get a little bit closer. So, yeah, I do think, when you talk about emotions in photography, I do think that feeling of being challenged or frustrated is one of the things I experience. Not a lot, not so that it's like, I don't wanna do this anymore, but it's enough to feed that motivation.
Right, so it's enough of like a frustrating challenge. Is there like I was just wondering if there was a specific moment that you could think of where you were out, maybe it was a new subject or particularly frustrating, I don't know, light or conditions that you were like, this is super frustrating and I'm going to come back and I'm going to persevere today.
I think I could give you an example from pretty much every single time I go out that is like that. And well, one really obvious example is we spent about 2.5 weeks in Alaska, and it was one of the best trips we've ever had. And when one is in Alaska, they photograph birds and wildlife. Like if you're a nature photographer, you it feels like I have to at least try doing wildlife. So I have been photographing birds. Like this last summer, I spent a lot of time trying to learn how to photograph birds, and my bird photographs are not great at all. I have a few that are okay, but nothing that I'm ready to share. And I felt the same way with wildlife photography, where it's just like this is really, really hard. And now that I've done it and experienced, like, it was so invigorating. I absolutely love the process of watching animals and getting to know their behaviors more, thinking about how I can present an animal as part of a landscape, because I don't want to be a wildlife photographer, but I would like to include more wildlife and birds in landscapes. So thinking about how I can do that more. But oh my gosh, it was just like I could be I'm not good at this at all, but it's really exciting. And it's that feeling of excitement and trying something new, but also realizing like I'm not good at this and I want to be better. So I think it's that same cycle just applied to a slightly different genre of nature and landscape photography.
Yeah, and recognizing like maybe I don't want to be like a full-time wildlife photographer, but I want to try this part. And I think anytime we go off and try like a little bit of a different genre or something new, um, like photographing from a boat or
Yeah.
whatever, right? That's particularly challenging. It can be particularly challenging, or photographing wildlife from a boat,
Oh my
combining
yeah,
those.
which I did in Alaska, and it's like the boat is moving, the wildlife is moving, it's raining, I'm wearing, like, 3 layers of rain gear, like, this is hard.
Right. It's not always easy. It's not always taking a stroll and coming back with a few like amazing
Yeah.
I got a rainbow and da 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 a lot of it can be really challenging, but it informs us, right? And I love that it pushes us to be better. And I love that you do that. I think anybody who wants to be better, you get outside yourself, you push yourself, you challenge yourself. I think there always is going to be that amount of like frustration because that's kind of what challenge is, you know?
Well,
You
your
don't
story
grow.
about Petrified Forest, I think that, like, the example of, like, holding your breath and trying these manual focus or focus stacks and hoping that the files actually align and wanting to go back. Like, that's kind of the same
Mhm.
story. It's just
Yeah.
playing out in a different landscape.
Well, I was there and I'm like, I am not like so I could have done a couple of different things. I could have been there and thought, I don't have my tripod. So so I can't get this perfect. So I'm just gonna not.
Mhm.
I mean, I could, right? Or well, I guess what were my other choices? I like thinking about this. Like, what are my choices right now? And I thought, you know what? I should at least just try because why not? I've never tried focus stacking handheld. I could just try and see. I'm pretty steady. I bet like I mean, what do I don't have anything to lose because I can come back, you know. I mean, all this stuff probably is some mud cracks. So it's not all going to look like this, going to look different. But uh I would kick myself if I didn't even try. Like seriously, I'd rather be frustrated than just not even try at all. I'd rather like I actually came back and I've already worked on one of them and I'm like, "Ooh, that's really fun. I'm so glad I did that," right?
And with image stabilization technology and really great software, I've hung over a boardwalk holding my breath, just hoping that I'm steady enough to get like, I was looking down on some fireweed in Alaska, and it was the same type of situation, like, why not just try? There's no way I can get my tripod in this particular position. Absolutely love the way all these plants and grasses are arranged together. Give it a try, and they work. Like, they all aligned perfectly. So, they
Magic.
merged and they were in focus. So, I agree, like, that's a great example of, like, you kinda regret, like, in your case, not bringing your tripod, but hopefully you have some photos to show for it, and maybe you learned a new technique that you can use in different circumstances.
Maybe I still have to piece together some of them. So, because some of them are like ever so slightly, but I think I can stack them decently in Photoshop
Mhm.
because I use Helicon. But I think just hang on, you guys. This is like a little technical for a second, but does will Helicon stack those like that for you, or do you just have to do it in Photoshop if they're misaligned?
I'd 99% of the time, Helicon Focus works.
Okay, I will try it.
And
All right,
then that
I'll play.
1% of the time, then you're like, you try it in Photoshop and you're like, "Oh, this is why I don't use Photoshop." And then you do it manually, and then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I
Oh,
think
yeah, I was just gonna do it. If it doesn't work in Helicon, then I just do it manually in
yeah.
Photoshop. So, okay, enough of that. Blah, blah, blah. Boring gear talk. Boring technicalities. But it like the technical stuff and knowing our technical stuff is actually what contributes to making photography great. We just have to know the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, um, okay. I have a couple of like stories from you, but I feel like here's what here's what we want to talk about next.
Okay.
What I love is going out to do the adventure and having the unexpected. And I've talked to several women that have had this happen to them. And you mentioned that you got stuck. So there's a well, maybe I'll just let you talk about it because I've never been there. So you got stuck on the Alvord Playa in Oregon in winter. And y'all, when we talk about going to places for photography, this is the kind of stuff that drives us. And then crazy things still happen because it's nature, right? So, or like there's so much unexpected out there. Um, anyway, tell us about this experience and could you start with first telling us about the Alvord Playa because I've never been there, but I have been to Death Valley. So just tell us a little bit about that so we have kind of a picture of what that looks like.
Okay, so the Alvord Playa is in southeastern Oregon, and it's one of the more remote places that I've been. It's this beautiful mountainous valley. So the Steens Mountains, I think, are to the west, if I have my geography correct. And then there's this massive playa in the valley, and it's BLM land, so Bureau of Land Management land, which means that it doesn't have the same kind of protections, and you can drive on the playa, which becomes part of the story later on. But the playa itself is so expansive, miles long by miles wide, and one of the beautiful things for people who enjoy abstracts and patterns in nature is as you move along the playa, the patterns change dramatically and your orientation towards the mountains obviously change as well. So um, the setting is just beautiful, and we had been there in the spring and summer and wanted to visit in winter because we were passing through. Thought we might as well stop. So if you this the scene is that it's this big expansive playa. The mud is kind of like a lightish brown color, and then you're ringed by beautiful mountains, and it's incredibly remote. So the nearest town or settlement, I would say, is Field Station, which is I think something like maybe a half an hour or 45 minutes away. And then there's Denio Junction, which has a gas, supposedly has gas, if I remember correctly. Or Fields also has gas, but like these are two little tiny settlements where you're very far away from anything else. And the closest towing company is 2.5 hours away in Burns, Oregon. So that's another critical component of this experience. But this was just like the most ridiculous trip where things just kept on not working out. So we went up to the Pacific Northwest. Our goal was to do coastal stuff, see if we could catch snow in the Columbia River Gorge, so waterfalls with snow around them. And things just kept on not working out. Like this trip, like nothing worked out. Things like we stayed with Ron's mom, and then he left all of his coats in her laundry room. So we had to turn around. We figured this out like 3 hours down the road,
Oh my
and it's
gosh.
winter. So it's
Oh
like
my
driving
gosh.
back to his mom's house to pick up the coats.
And
And
those are
then
not
we
cheap. You cannot run into like a drugstore like CVS or a Target and just grab that stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's like we're camping in 0-degree weather. You we need coats.
Right,
So we
exactly.
turn around to get the coats, and then it's like, "Okay, so what's on the way?" Crater Lake is on the way, so we're gonna stop at Crater Lake. Well, we drive through rain before heading up into higher elevation. We get up to Crater Lake, and again, we're camping, so, in the car. We were sleeping in the back of our RAV4, little SUV, had a mattress, sleeping bags, all that. We get out of the car at like 8 PM, it's dark, the cargo box is frozen shut. So, like, things like our camping stove, our fuel, all of that stuff is in the cargo box frozen shut, so it's not like we could boil water, pour it on the lock, and then unlock the so it's like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." So, then we're like, "Okay, this clearly isn't working," so we leave Crater Lake to drive to a lower elevation place, find a cheap motel, sleep in that cheap motel, and we're like, okay, it's time to go home. Like things just haven't been working. It's We're ready for something different. And so we along the way, along the route back to Denver is Alvord Playa. So thinking, oh, it'd be great to see those mountains with snow. So that's our next stop. Well,
Luck is it sounds like luck is not with you. This is the frustration. This is the bad frustration.
yeah, and this is one of those stories where in the middle of it, we're still laughing. It's not like we're like this not mad or frustrated. It's just like, this is ridiculous. We've had this series. There were other ridiculous things too, but just keep moving on with the point of the story. So we get to the Alvord Playa. It's 0 degrees. It's like completely frozen or freezing temperatures. So we're thinking, oh, it's totally fine to drive on the playa. Totally fine. There are a bunch of like kind of rocky access roads, but then you can drive down, and then once you're on the playa, then you can drive around. So we sleep on the playa, thinking we'll get up for sunrise in the morning to find, and we'll drive around looking for an interesting section of mud, and then we'll photograph sunrise. Well, the thing that we forgot about is that a hot spring meanders its way out onto the playa. It was covered in snow and it was dark. So we're just driving along on this frozen playa until we drive into where the hot spring has meandered out onto the playa, and we immediately sink into the snow covered frozen hot spring. So
Oh my
that's
gosh.
it's like and it's important to remember we are 2.5 mile or 2.5 hours away from the town, the closest town that has a tow truck. So we try
Driving.
all
Like
we try all the things during the day. So obviously we don't photograph sunrise because we're now stuck in mud, just sticky, ridiculous mud.
wait, wait,
Realize
wait, wait. Wait,
okay.
hang on a second. And then
Okay.
do you get out of your car and you're trying to get yourself out and then your feet are all covered with mud?
Oh,
Or
feet
like
free? Like, it's not
li
feet, it's
it's
like
every
everything is covered in mud. Everything. And you so it's but because it's sunny and clear, during the day, all the frozen stuff melts. So now
Mm.
it's just mud everywhere. And we try everything we can think of to get ourselves out, all the tactics. We realize we're not gonna get ourselves out.
And
A
there's, like,
local
mud kicking up from the tires and, like, all of the
Yeah,
things.
all of the things, and we're just because it's getting warmer, we're just sinking more and more and more into the
Oh
mud.
gosh.
And,
Wait, 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 hang on. How
okay,
far up was this mud into your tires?
probably like 6 to 8 inches.
Ugh, okay. Oh
And,
my gosh.
s a local guy there are a couple houses along the edge of the playa. I don't remember how exactly we got in touch with this local guy. He comes out with a chain, tries to get us out. He sinks into the mud. Like, he was able to get himself out. We realized, okay, we're just gonna stay for the night. We have all our camping gear, 0-degree sleeping bags, all that stuff. We'll be fine. But then once we wake up in the morning, the car is now frozen into the mud. So the car is now literally frozen into the mud. It's like
Were you laughing still? Like
we were mostly laughing. It was like, at some point, we're gonna get out. The car is gonna get out. It might not be this winter,
right, but it was
but
like it's like the laughing, like, "Of course this happened," and then the crying, like, it's just like
oh, it's
like
like but one of the great things, and I think that there are so many lessons in this story, is first, we were lucky because we had cell service. If we didn't, then having, like, an InReach or a Garmin or a Garmin InReach or some other emergency satellite service, we had all of our camping gear that luckily was no longer frozen into the cargo box, and we had lots of water, we had lots of food. So what could have been an incredibly dangerous situation actually was okay. Like, we could have walked the couple of miles to one of the settlements, and probably somebody could have helped us. Like, we could have stayed with somebody, or they could have helped us. So it wasn't like a really bad, dangerous situation, but it wasn't great. Like, it's freezing
right.
weather, and
I know,
we're
and you wanna go do your things and not be covered with mud, and you wanna do photography, which is way more fun than being stuck in mud.
yeah,
So
and there was no photography happening, even though it was, like, perfect, great photography conditions, because all the water that's in between all those little channels, you have mud tiles with little frozen channels around it, so you have mud and then ice, and, so it was, like, really, really cool, but our car is
you
stuck in
just
mud.
were like and, I get it, like, and I know the story isn't over, but I get sometimes when it's, like, too much, then we can just say, "You know what? That's not happening right now." Like, my creativity and my ability to concentrate on this and for it to be, like, a remotely pleasant experience is now gone. So, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
yeah, like, I don't have to do that here,
Yeah,
you
there was
know?
no mental space for thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna get my camera out." Like, I'm covered in mud also, like, nothing I'm not it was just it was just getting to be more and more ridiculous, and I wasn't in the mental place to feel like I wanna do photography. So
Right.
to wrap up the story, we the next morning we're now frozen. We realize that's a problem. Okay, we have to call somebody to help us out. So we call the towing company. We figure out since we luckily had internet, we figure out okay, we can call this guy. And then as Ron's negotiating with him, because I can hear what he's saying in terms of the price, and he's like minimum $1,200, and I'm like negotiate like, you have to negotiate. This is ridiculous. And Ron's like, we're not in a situation to negotiate. There's no negotiation with this guy. We have to convince him to drive onto this playa that we're currently stuck on and then try to pull us out. So he finally agrees to come out. And as he's hooking up the winch, we're still kind of frozen. He starts doing his thing. He starts pulling the car out, and you could see the car, like, release from the frozen mud. It, like, pops out of the frozen mud.
Like ice,
He
like an ice
oh,
cube?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like he's breaking our car out of an ice cube.
Oh my
It
gosh.
pops out. He winches the car to dry land, and we're out. We pay him the $1,200.
Happily.
He's
I mean, not so happily,
happily
but
yeah, so but the car is still completely covered in mud, and we still have probably, like, 1,100 miles to go to get to Denver because we're kinda done. Like, the trip, it's done. Like, we're
yeah,
mentally past all
totally.
this. So we stop in West Wendover, Utah. The motel that we decide to stay in, our room did not have heat, so the heater in the room didn't work. We have to drive 55 miles max home because there's mud all over the car and it's, like, jiggling. It's just so we pull into the driveway, it's like spraying the car off. There's an entire Alvord playa in my parents' driveway, which is where we stopped first to spray off the mud. It's like the entire driveway is now covered in Alvord playa mud, and it's just like, we're still laughing. I guess that's the bottom line is we're still laughing.
And to your parents, you know how parents are like, "I don't know what you kids are doing," you know? I mean, were your parents like, "And this is what you do for a living? Like, this is what you do?"
Well, growing up, I was the child who, like, never wore anything but a pink skirt, like a pink and purple skirt. Like, I didn't get dirty. I had no interest in nature until I was 21, and I think my parents are probably like, they're like, "What is this? Like, this is not the person that that we knew." Like, and I think that's great. I'm happy. I'm really happy that I've become a much more outdoorsy person. I still obviously like pink and purple and all those girly things, but yeah, it's just like, this is what you do for fun.
Right. Exactly. And my mom she'll tell me, she'll be like, I said, "And then on the way, I'm gonna camp in this place." She'll be like, "How will you be safe? How will you protect yourself?" I'm like, "Mom, there's no people there." She's like, "I know, but what if some stranger," I'm like, just some serial killer is wandering the desert, happens to go on the dirt road that I'm on, and is looking for me, right? Like like you would have to be looking for me to find me, right? And so I'm like, "Mom, it's gonna be okay." But I also have my little Garmin,
Yeah.
my little InReach mini. So I can send little messages that the little pre-done messages that says, "I'm starting my trip now. I'm safe, leaving now," or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, she likes
Yeah,
it when I do that.
that's for you, Bree, since you didn't start traveling on your own until later in your
Recently,
life.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, how did you handle the safety thing? Like, did it just feel like not an issue for you, or has it been something that you've tried to deal with and confront, or you're not gonna let it limit you?
Right, that part, but also, like, I look at a lot of, I mean, like, I'm less safe driving on the road than I am camping solo somewhere, although I have looked at a few. I'll answer that question, but I have, like, on my whenever I'm, like, because I just did, like, a road trip, and I drove out to California by myself, and I was going a bunch of places by myself. And so when I'm looking, I'm like, "Oh, I wanna go to this place, but where can I stay? Because I need to know where I'm gonna lay my head." And so I was looking at some backcountry sites, and I ended up going, "No, I don't like that." Like, it's too close to a main road, or I think as a woman, I feel like as a woman, I wanna be just a little bit more cognizant of where I am and my surroundings for that reason. So, you know, I'm pretty independent. To answer your question, I'm personally pretty, like, relatively independent, although when my husband's around, I'm like, "Hey, could you do that for me?" You know what I mean? So, but he'll tell me, like, "You're just so independent." Like, sometimes, like, it makes things difficult. Like, you just have to do it on your own. I'm like, "Yeah, because this is how I learn stuff." Like, I have to try it and see. And I tap into my intuition a lot just to because I don't want to go play. I think fear is important. It's an important emotion. Like, it helps us. And so if I'm ever, like, feeling afraid, I'm going, "Okay, is this something I should, like, really be worried about, or could I just do this anyway and be fine with it?" So, for sure there's quite a few times that I'm like, this isn't my most comfortable thing that I've ever done, but I don't think I'm not like I still am pretty safe, or I know I've already taken care of some safety things. Like I have extra water right now. I have extra food. Like I don't ever go on a hike without a little extra water and like at least an extra snack, even though think I don't need them. Right. So anyway, but yeah, I think just building my confidence, growing some of my own personal confidence has really helped me do that, especially as a woman, because this
Mhm.
is the Wild Women in Photography
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly.
You know? Well, I think this is interesting that you didn't start really hiking until you were in your 20s, and I see you as this person that, like, you just go out and do the things. And, like, you and your husband have really done a lot of work in, exploring Death Valley and, like, going to places I would have never thought of. Like, you've explored a lot of the canyons and done a lot of, like backpacking trips. Like you guys have been there for the past, like, I don't know how many years in a row, every year, doing this work. I love that you found places that you've been passionate about. If you don't mind, so one of the things that you shared with me about Death Valley was this experience that you had about processing grief and using photography to do that. And this was in Death Valley. So, and I think t- to start, I think a lot of people use photography or use their creative work, like painting or whatever, to express themselves emotionally or to work through it. There's just something I think meditative about making things. It allows you to think. It allows you to be expressive and just kind of like let that come out of you. So um, anyway, so will you tell us about this experience you had in Death Valley with your friend?
Yeah. I think Death Valley is such an interesting place for me because it's been some of the best moments in my life and then also working through some of the worst. So I wonder if that's part of the reason why I love it so much is because it
Mm,
does have it's not just the landscape, but it's those wide open places and the feeling so energized and excited and challenged that has also been just a place to think through some really hard things. So the story that I mentioned previously starts when so we have an Airstream trailer, so an RV, like a 25-foot trailer, and we work when we do our trips. We do usually 4 to 12-week trips where we take the trailer and then we work from the trailer during the day and then photograph in the morning or afternoon or both, and then do more extensive exploring on the weekends. So we were sitting in the Stovepipe Wells campground, which is right next to the Mesquite Dunes, and I get a call from a coworker or a colleague's coworker or a friend's coworker, like, why is this organization showing up on my caller ID? Answer, and the woman on the other end tells me that one of my closest friends was found dead in her sleep. She didn't come to work that morning. They went to check on her, and she had passed away during the middle of the night. And she was in her early 50s. She did have some health problems, but like didn't think it was that severe. She and I had my husband and I had just moved to rural southwestern Colorado, where we had been living in Denver, and that had caused some tension between this friend and I. Her name was Erin, and so we had that rift had meant that we hadn't been talking as much anymore, and, because she was pretty upset with me for moving, and it's just like the absolute intense shock of learning that I'm never going to see this person again,
mhm,
and then, like, what do I do? And so we got in the car a couple of hours later, it's like, "I need to be outside." So we got in the car, headed to Ubehebe Crater, and just hiked around. And I think that's an example of how being outside was like the absolute only thing that could have helped me feel better in that particular instance. And I think it was just I think like the wide open spaces, like that's one of the reasons I always come back to feeling like so energized about Death Valley is it's just I think it's a good reminder of how I think in that experience of like I can work through this and that the world is such a big place. Things are I'm not quite sure. It's hard to talk about, like, why that moment felt so like it was, like, the only that it was helping me go through that immediate process of grief in a positive way, versus what some of the other things that I could have chosen to do. Another experience that I had was my dad passed away in 2020, and we in January of 2020, and we immediately went to Death Valley after his funeral. And it's like the same experience of I just remember standing by the Amargosa River down in the southern part of the park and just wondering at the mountains around me and feeling like I was at peace for the first time. Maybe that's what it is. I think it's hard to when you have so many emotions flowing through you, like why was this being in this park and this landscape at that time? And maybe it's just because I know it, I love it, and it's that feeling of, like, here's a little glimmer of peace among a sea of of really, really challenging emotions and sadness and anxiety, and, like, that having a touch point to feel a little bit at ease is maybe why being in that place at those 2 times felt like a little bit of saving grace, maybe.
I think because I feel like this about White Sands, and I mean, I love Death Valley too. Already planning my next trip. But I think in some places we just feel like home. It just feels comfortable, even though it's totally wild. Like I remember when I told my mom I was going to go to Death Valley, I took a couple of my sisters and we camped. And my mom was like, I don't know why you're going to Death Valley. It's called death for a reason. Right. And so, so it doesn't seem like a very inviting place, but it's so interesting that we're attracted to these places and people are attracted to different places. And, some people love the city, like being in the city with all of the cacophony, the noises and all the people, like might feel really calming. You know what I mean? Like you could just like lose yourself in the streets. But I love walking out, into the dunes. And it's very similar in Death Valley in so many different places because there's not a lot of noise. Like when you're out on the
Mhm.
playa in Death Valley, there's like, unless there's a plane flying overhead, there's zero noise because there's not like, it's not like you're in the trees. There's no like
Yeah.
birds flying around you. There's no extra bugs. There's no, there's not a lot of things to distract. And it's interesting because it really is just you and the earth and like your thoughts. And I wonder if it was just a place like you're like, I need a place, I need something to do that's very familiar and you can kind of just photograph. I'm not saying you do it like with one arm tied behind your back, but it's something that it flows naturally at this point. And then it feels really comfortable. So being outside and also the act of
Mhm.
walking and moving your body actually like releases endorphins. It helps you process. And all of that combined together probably was like the best medicine for that's probably one reason why it was the best medicine. And great that you happened to be there at that time. Like what a little universe magic that's where you were at those times, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, like, being able to go out and feel, like, very connected to a place, doing something that puts my mind at ease, like, really helped me, I think, process that immediate trauma of losing one of my closest friends who, again, I had this rift with, which now seems so incredibly stupid, like, that we had talked to each other less because I had moved. It's like, ugh. Lots of regret around that, of course, but I think this what we're talking about now is why a lot of people do stick with photography, because if you do have mental health challenges or you're trying to work through some emotional trauma or process something that happened in your life, it is a way to calm your mind and allow the space to either work through it or to be distracted to the point where it helps you feel better. Like there are just a lot of those mental health benefits. Or if you just want to feel good and feel refreshed and energized, that the photography can help with that full range of emotions. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this pursuit is that it can help you at all different points in your life, like a lot of different creative things. But I think photography has the benefit of nature photography in particular, getting you outside into inspiring and beautiful places and then giving you the space to work through or just enjoy whatever emotions you're experiencing in a way that you might not have with some other creative pursuits.
Well said.
Mhm.
And I also want to put like a little caveat on that this isn't maybe necessarily, we're talking about real like personal work here that could help you process. Like if you're out doing your professional photography, it's probably not that relaxing. Or hopefully you can combine the two like you do. So, sort of. I if you are a
Sort
professional photographer, you know that just making photos is not the only thing that you do. So, well, Sarah, this has been really lovely. I really appreciate you sharing all of these experiences. And speaking of being a professional, and this is not making pictures is not the only thing that you do. Tell us about, let's see, I'm looking here. Tell us about what you have coming because I'm excited for this.
Yeah. So I have essentially stopped teaching in person for a little while because I want to work on some of those projects that keep on bubbling up in my mind.
Mhm.
And one of them is just refreshing something that has been, I think, was a really important project when I was first getting started as a nature photographer as a professional. So trying to take what was a hobby at the time and then trying to turn it into a little bit of a career that's now my full-time career. And that was the first putting out the first edition of our Beyond the Grand Landscape ebook, which I can't even remember when we did it, but it's now very long in the tooth and it needs to be updated. So I've been working really hard on taking what was an ebook, just the Beyond the Grand Landscape ebook, and turning it into more of a course. So it will be an ebook plus some workbook type things, exercises to help people work through some of these things in the field. A little bit of the emotional side too, but a lot of the practical side, and then also some videos to take these ideas that at the time there weren't as many people doing that type of photography, photographing small scenes in nature. And now it's a very significant genre that a lot of people are pursuing. So it will be interesting to see how this second version is received. It's like, does everybody know all of these things now, or is there still a place for all of these lessons? Either way, I feel like I want to have my perspective on this topic out in the world. So I will hopefully be releasing that soon, and then just continuing to work on things like a book on Death Valley, a couple of other new courses on things that I'm excited about, and just teaching photography through online learning instead of doing it in person because I wasn't for a lot of different reasons I wasn't getting a lot of energy from that. So I'm taking a little break from it. Maybe it'll come back, but for now I'm excited to be focusing on some of those uh, like the distance learning and online learning and writing projects and things that I haven't necessarily made the space for.
Right. I love that you're taking the time to do that. I think it's awesome. And I know you're like, well, maybe more people are doing this, but if I can only a few years ago be like, photographing rocks is a thing, then there's still plenty of people out there that are going to still have this epiphany. So, oh, by the way, I'm going to suggest an extended part of your course, which is handheld focus stacking. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm
There
just
will
kidding,
be
everyone.
no, there's going to actually be a section on focus stacking because with small scenes, and the new technology with cameras. I know we don't this isn't a tech podcast, but I feel like the focus stacking stuff has opened up all sorts of new creative opportunities that didn't exist before or that were so technically complicated that I wasn't interested in doing it. So I actually feel like it's a really important part of the topic. So some of the practical technical stuff actually helps you be at your creative
Yes.
best.
It helps you be less frustrated when you go out and you can actually like if you know it and you've practiced it, then you can actually have a more enjoyable time during doing photography, which is what I'm all about.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Me
so
too.
yeah, awesome. We love it. Sarah, this has been really fun. I really appreciate you making the time for this. It's always fun to chat with you. I kind of consider you my friend now, and I'm really thrilled about it.
Yes, hopefully we can actually take that friendship from, like, just chatting on Zoom about photography to actually doing some photography in the field
Right? Yeah,
together.
so maybe I will see your face not flat on computer
Yeah,
screen one day.
exactly. That would be fantastic.
That would be fun. I do love meeting people in person, and it's totally my jam. I love making those connections. So,
Yeah, me too.
all right. Well, until we meet in person. Hmm?
Well, I will say one more thing. I want to compliment you on doing these discussions because the first one that I listened to, it was just so exciting to hear women talking about nature photography. Because when I got started in this field and started going to events and looking for people, role models, and people that were doing this as a woman, like there were just there, I could count the people on one hand probably, and they all felt so far off. Like they were the top of the field publishing books and doing all these big things. I'm like, I can't reach out to her. Like I could have, I should have, but I felt like I couldn't. And so to fast forward to now, where you think there are enough women to talk to on a biweekly basis about their experience in nature and photography through photography, that is so exciting. And I'm so glad that you're doing it. And I just love that like conversations between women about this thing that's so important to both of us. It's fantastic. So, a little compliment to you for doing this. I think it's
Ah,
great.
thank you. I think it's important too. And I have this little like text group of friends. To shout out to my 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 wild my the original wild women. Um I said, "This is what I'm thinking of." And I said, "But I think I'm crazy for starting a second podcast." And they were like, "No, you have to do this. This has to happen." And so I've had a lot of like from the get go, a lot of support there. So
Well, you might be crazy for starting a second podcast, but
yes, I am. I already know. It's fine.
but aside from the fact that like keeping 2 podcasts going, it's like Ron and I were talking about how I need to be more disciplined. He wasn't telling me. I was reflecting to him that I felt like I need to be more disciplined. Like if you can do 2 podcasts, I can write a blog post every week.
Well, you know, I guess we all do what we want. And
Yeah.
so I just felt like this needed to be out in the world. And so I maybe actually ditching out on some other, things that I had planned so I could do this because I think it's like so important. And I really think it's important for people to connect, like conversationally, but also like, I want other people in the world I want so many people in the world to know about women in photography, and I wanna celebrate that, and it's so fun. And it's so fun to have you on so we can hear your stories and celebrate you, and we're gonna tell everyone to go this hopefully your ebook is out by now, and so we're gonna tell everyone to, like, go check it out. So all the links will be in the description and you'll know how to get there. So thanks, Sarah. Thanks
And
for
I can
joining me.
include a photo of our car stuck in the Albert Playa.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. We will do
Okay,
that.
that sounds great. Thank you so much for this conversation, Bree. It was great. I had a lot of
Is
fun.
is so fun. Me too. All right. Bye everyone.
Come with me on my next adventure. Be a wild woman and join me on one of my small group photography escapes in places like the cypress swamps of East Texas or White Sands, New Mexico. Go to wildwomanphotography.com for all the details. While you're there, you can check out featured wild women, episode transcripts, and more. Oh, and I'd love for you to support this podcast and all these incredible wild women in photography by leaving a review or sharing with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.